If you're a frequent PNW Haunts and Homicides listener, you probably already know we're Birdie ambassadors.
We wanted to take a quick moment to tell you a little bit more about this awesome product.
Birdie is the modern personal safety alarm made for women by women.
In a situation where you feel threatened or unsafe, you can simply activate Birdie's loud siren and flashing light to create a diversion.
Birdie is perfect to carry anytime because the device is lightweight and comes in a variety of colors.
So important. Use our ambassador link and coupon code PNW Haunts and Homicides to receive 10% off your purchase. Like our social media handles, the coupon code is all spelled out, no special characters.
You can find the link and promo code in our show notes or PNW Haunts and Homicides link tree.
Have a safe ass day! Hi, Cassie.
Hi, Caitlin. Why are you so fucking bubbly?
Because it's the beginning.
Yeah. Before you rip our hearts out and
Do you
shove them
like
down
that?
our throats.
You like that explanation? It's the beginning.
Yeah.
Oh, we usually joke that we're like 14-year-old boys, but I feel like whenever I do my intro, I feel like a 4-year-old.
Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, creepy people.
Hey, creepy people.
This is PNW Haunts and Homicides.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so last week we got a bit of background on Kirby Anthony, yes, correct, as well as the details of a series of really mind-numbingly awful crimes that he commit as a young man before moving. And perhaps more aptly, actually, he fled to Alaska, and then he did some more really terrible things.
Yeah. They were really icky.
It's really unfortunate that I shared more details with Cassie, and
Yeah. Can we not do that again?
yeah.
I mean, I asked you, but
Yeah,
next
that's
time
true.
I do
She
that-
was like, I have questions. And
You're
I was
like, no, you don't.
I don't think you do. Yeah, I think I know better now.
You failed at your job at protecting me from running down that fucking hallway, Caitlin. I ran down it and I didn't like what I saw.
She really didn't like it, you guys. So, once in Alaska, it was proven that if you thought everything leading up to that point was pretty horrific, boy, were you wrong. Because the worst was definitely left to come. We left off at the beginning of the investigation into the Newman family murders. We've already begun to delve into just how thoroughly motivated that law enforcement teams working on this case were to get this one right. After discovering the brutality of the crime at that scene, I think no one felt like they were going to be able to sleep at night or find any peace whatsoever until they knew that the individual responsible would be held responsible. Just yuck.
Yeah. All I can say is and then a blank stare.
Yeah. All that in mind, Kirby Anthony was one of many people that investigators were interested in speaking to. As it turns out, he had a pretty weird reaction to the death notification by law enforcement.
Oh, yeah, because he already knew.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really weird.
Oh.
I don't know. It just is one of those things where even when you know, you're just like, Kirby, what's going on here,
Was
bud?
he not a good actor?
No. No, sure wasn't. He was immediately inconsolable with a totally over-the-top emotional reaction.
Oh.
Yeah, which feels a little heartless to say out loud, but hear me out. After concluding my research, I'm confident the detective's skin actually began crawling as their spidey senses tingled. Something just didn't seem right. It was like it was just all an act. Kirby took a break from what I'm sure he thought was an Oscar nomination-worthy performance, stopping very suddenly. He's sobbing uncontrollably to ask who had been the one to discover the murders.
Wow. That sounds like someone who murdered someone would ask.
Right? When he was informed that Nancy and her daughters had been found by Cheryl, his next super casual comment, "Oh, that makes sense. She's the only one who has a key."
That's a very weird thing to say.
It's just a weird thing to bring up in that moment.
Yeah.
You know, it's like a switch was flicked and all of a sudden he wants to know details about the investigation. And then he's just making these really odd comments. Like, what does that matter? Why are we talking about that?
Yeah.
It's just a truly bizarre detail to select for hyperfocus. And I've had some strange things that I've hyperfocused on. Like that time I started a true crime podcast.
Woo!
But yeah, I'm just kind of looking at Kirby sideways here. So turns out I was 1,000% not the only one. This next part, we're talking about an even weirder type of hyperfocus somehow. So you might recall I mentioned, just kind of as a throwaway comment almost, that Nancy borrowed her sister's vacuum shortly before the murders occurred. Ringing any bells?
Yes.
Cassie agrees.
You talked about Central Vac.
Yep, and you're like, weird.
I used to clean houses, so, you talk about vacuums and I'm in. I'm listening.
Yeah. I'm all ears. Well, that's all you need to know for this to start getting interesting. Sergeant Gifford initially wanted to send the bag from that vacuum with all of the dirt, grime, debris, and fibers it contained off to the FBI forensic lab. He got shut down because it was believed it would be incredibly time-consuming to process and would likely yield very little to help either the progression of the case or the development of the forensic evidence that would hopefully later be used in court.
I'd probably say do it anyway.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, shot in the
Murder.
dark. Like, just 3 homicides. So, like, maybe, like, I don't know. Just
the
check it
vacuum.
out.
Yeah. Sift through the dirt.
Yeah. Seems like a thought, but whatever. All right. So some more background on the vacuum cleaner, which is literally not something I ever thought I would say, but here we are.
I'm like fighting the urge to ask you what kind of vacuum it is.
Oh, we will get to it.
Okay.
We are going to get to it. You will not believe this. Because it would actually end up being pretty critical. Paul had used an attachment to vacuum beard trimmings just prior to lending it to Nancy to use.
Okay.
So Paul Chapman's beard trimmings would be in the bag, and Gifford's intent in looking into the contents was to determine if it had actually been used after being lent out by the Chapmans. So he's totally unfazed that they're not going to send it off to the FBI lab. He is also totally unfazed by the thought of sifting through all of that nastiness. Gifford decided to do it himself when his supervisor vetoed sending it on to the FBI.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After spending hours examining the bag and contents, he was able to prove that the vacuum had been used twice after being lent out. That's 2 times.
That's interesting how you would figure that out.
The layers.
Oh.
Mhm.
The layers.
The layers. He had painstakingly sifted through the contents with tweezers
Oh my God.
so that specific samples could be analyzed. You guys, this is my literal nightmare.
Yeah.
But I'm glad that he had the stomach to do it. I mean, that's just so detail oriented. I would literally give up after 15 minutes.
Yeah.
Just too much. But Gifford's thinking was that if he could show that the carpets had been vacuumed clean in preparation of the husband's return home, so before the murders, then any hair or fiber evidence located in the layer identified as being added to the bag following the murder would be telling of the crime, despite obvious effort being taken to clean up and conceal any forensic traces. Since the family appeared to have no enemies, and at this point investigators didn't have an awful lot in the way of leads, Gifford had a nagging suspicion this just might pay off. Oh, and also, already, everyone hated Anthony's face, so they felt like there was definitely a chance that he did it and his DNA was going to be in there.
His name's Anthony?
That's his last name.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
God. I was like, I thought his name was Kirby. I'm so confused. Damn it.
If his DNA was in fact found in that layer, the one that was added after the murders would have taken place, it might not be enough evidence to convict him, but it would certainly cast a fair bit of suspicion his way.
Yeah.
If there was also other evidence, then they could build a solid case knowing they had the right guy. I'm not a forensic scientist, but this seems like good investigative work backed up by science. Certainly at least by the standard of the late 1980s.
Yeah.
And officially this means nothing, but I think it's worth noting that this was a Kirby brand vacuum.
Oh, no. It was not.
Uh-huh. Somebody call Alanis Morissette. She needs to write a new verse about this.
Oh my God.
It literally had his name on it.
That is so fucking weird.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about synchronicities, man.
Mm-hmm. I know. I was like, you've got to be fucking kidding.
Holy shit. Did they still make those vacuum cleaners?
I think so, yeah.
I ain't getting one.
No, me neither. Don't worry, though. The investigators didn't stop at that. There was more than the contents of Kirby's namesake vacuum cleaner that tied him to the crime. Each time Kirby was questioned through the course of the investigation, details of his story started to change. Yeah. Mr. I can't feel my face when I'm lying, Kirby, claimed to have an airtight alibi.
I'm sure he did.
Which, to be fair, just about everyone who's being questioned in connection with a triple homicide is going to take a shot with this assertion. If you're talking to me about 3 people that were murdered, I am going to be putting my ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Okay? But unlike others that were questioned, his story fell apart. Because it wasn't true. Investigators attempted to substantiate not just his alibi, but his location and his activities before, during, and after the murders. He couldn't reliably explain where he had been between 8:30 and 10:30 a.m. on that Saturday in March, which you may recall was a very critical window of time in particular.
Yep.
Because they initially narrowed down the time of death based on the autopsies to basically midnight Friday and around 10 a.m. Saturday. But when they found the cereal bowls in the sink, they were able to figure out, okay, well, the girls must have woken up in the morning, had cereal. Cheryl woke up in the morning, had coffee. couple of cigarettes. So that's how we get the timeline update there.
But that's a crazy, time to murder people.
And there's not really a good time,
No.
arguably, but I'm with you. What?
You think middle of the night.
Right.
You think you're safe in the morning. It's daylight.
Yes.
You started your morning, you had your breakfast.
Yeah.
Probably off to shower and get ready for the day. And then you're just fucking murdered.
Yeah.
Ugh.
Police were able to search Kirby's place shortly after the murders with his permission, which is great because there was no need to delay to obtain a warrant in that instance.
Nice.
Yeah. However, he quickly changed his tune and became angry, asserting that they were harassing him rather than looking for the real killer. During the search, Spatafora found John Newman's camera that was believed to have been stolen and likely by the killer.
Oh my God.
Kirby claimed that Nancy had allowed him to borrow it, though John swore that this was definitely not true. It simply wasn't something that she would have done, loaning out his camera while he was out of town, especially without his knowledge.
Yeah.
Which I'm picturing trying to explain to you or Chris that I just lent out your camera.
Yeah, no.
No.
That's not something you would do.
No.
No.
Also, Kirby owned at least 2 cameras of his own. He claimed his own cameras were in storage. So he really needed to borrow this so he could take pictures of something. Undeveloped film was found in the camera after being taken into evidence by the police. That particular roll had family holiday photos of the Newman family.
Oh.
And oddly, not a single fucking photo taken by Kirby since having borrowed it.
Huh. Yeah, what'd you borrow it for? You needed it so bad.
Right? It's not super compelling in terms of actual evidence.
Yeah.
Perhaps. I'm fully convinced. I think that's critical.
It just adds to it,
It does, yeah, because who borrows a camera from someone that's then found to be murdered, forgets to tell the police, and then you haven't even taken a single picture with it? Hope it was worth it if you did actually legitimately borrow it.
Yeah.
He didn't.
And the fact that it had their fucking holiday photos on it is so gross. It makes me feel like he wanted them for to look at later.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure if he would have known what was on the undeveloped roll, but
he's probably all excited to get it developed.
Yeah.
Ooh.
I don't want to go there in my head.
But again, she wouldn't have given him the film. She would have taken the film out, right?
Right. If you're going to borrow a camera, you're going to put your own film in it. There's so many reasons why that just doesn't make any goddamn sense. Then there was the whole Burger King aspect of his alibi. On the morning the murders took place in the Newman home, Kirby asserted he had visited a Burger King and eaten breakfast in their parking lot.
Okay.
The employees at Burger King did not recall having seen him. This is despite the fact that he said he sat in the parking lot eating his breakfast for a lengthy period that morning because he was trying to use this as his alibi.
His airtight alibi.
Yeah. Seems super airtight, right? When this was brought to attention by police, Kirby then attempted to clarify. He had meant the parking lot across the street from the Burger King.
Okay.
Most damning to this point, though, was the fact that he revealed details of the crime.
No. What an idiot.
Following the discovery of the victims to several people that he spoke to. Well, before the police or press had released any of those particular details.
Oh my God.
This is why we sometimes have questions and no answers in a case. It's crushing for those of us that are following and, are interested in the case, but it's critical to hold certain details back so that law enforcement can be sure about a potential perpetrator in these instances. Because, Kirby, how could you have known that?
Wow.
Why are they always dumb enough to talk about the things that no one could possibly know?
I mean, I'm glad he was dumb, but still, I'm just like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Honestly, oftentimes it just seems like they want to shock people with gruesome details of the crime.
Yeah, it's almost like they're reliving it.
Yes.
Like,
oh,
through other people's
absolutely.
eyes.
I think so.
Yeah.
Ultimately, the investigators and prosecutor hoped that a combination of circumstantial and physical or forensic evidence would be enough to create a very strong link between Kirby and the crime. At least enough that a jury would convict him. He had John's camera, a bizarre story about how Nancy lent it to him. John adamantly denied that Nancy would have done any such thing. Obviously, she's not running a rental service of her husband's stuff whenever he leaves town. There were also witnesses that saw him paying for meals in a restaurant with rolled coins. It was believed to be some of the tip change that he had stolen from Nancy's jar at the time of the murders.
Wow.
She also kept papers to roll coins in that same jar.
Mm.
That's not a lot, in my opinion, or probably anybody else's, but it's something. And it's one of the somethings starting to stack up against Kirby.
Yeah. I mean, how many people pay with rolled up coins? I mean, I guess maybe back in that day it was more common, but...
Yeah. But I mean, it's just kind of like, oh, weird, because this tip jar at the crime scene was empty and it was filled with a bunch of coins and rolling papers.
Yeah.
So weird. After the investigators told an inquiring Kirby they had test results back from the FBI lab that they wanted to discuss further with him, he agreed to meet with the investigators again. Now, remember, they didn't really send anything.
Yeah.
At least not what we've talked about. Rather than actually show up for the appointment they had scheduled on April 14th, he made an excuse for his no-show. I have to imagine it was a lame one. He was pretty well known for that. Like the time he called in sick to work saying a relative had died. Either way, whatever he might have said wasn't as dumb as what he was about to do.
Oh, no.
He tried to make a run for the Canadian border. But it wasn't enough just to make a run for it. He called his ex-girlfriend that was living in Pennsylvania before taking off for good old Canada. It was a pretty brazen attempt to make an escape. He told this poor woman he wanted to come see her and her children.
In Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I'm not sure where geographically he thinks Pennsylvania is.
Did he think it was in Canada?
I'm not really sure. The whole thing just really got me. But this is crazy. She had her shit packed up with her kids ready to go, as in GTFO, get the fuck out, by the time her husband got home from work.
Wow. She was ready to run.
Day. She told him when he got home, we're moving and we're moving right now.
Wow. Holy shit. Yeah. That just reminds me of the card where it was like if you're whatever it said and it said to run.
Yeah. No word on whether the husband was on board with relocating, but that's besides the point.
If my significant other said we're moving right this second, I would just no question. We're going.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure there was like a crazed look in her eyes at that moment. Point being that literal years later, that was the level of fear that Kirby inspired in this poor woman.
Oh, man.
Thankfully, even though once the authorities were alerted, they were too late to catch him on the American side of the border, they weren't quite shit out of luck just yet.
Good.
If you haven't visited our lovely neighbors to the north, you may not know this, but there's over 25 miles of road that doesn't belong to either nation. That's between American customs and crossing over to the Canadian side.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Which, now that it feels more and more like Gilead every single day on the American side, that might end up being my permanent home. Just pitch a tent in the no man's land there. That or Dave and Paul's Lego room.
Yeah. The masturbatorium. Sorry, Paul. I did it.
I know. I'm not even sure that I'm kidding at this point. It's... Investigators were able to reach out to Canadian border authorities, speaking to the officer on duty at the border check, to inform them this man approaching their border was wanted as a suspect in a triple homicide, was previously convicted as a felon, as well as being a suspect in a rape, attempted murder that had taken place in yet another state. Which most of this, I'm sure, was super compelling, but totally unnecessary because to my knowledge, they will not allow convicted felons cross the border into Canada.
That's probably pretty smart.
Yeah. My notes say, DP, look into this for me because I may have to burn some shit down on my way up, okay? I mean, I'm totally kidding.
Yeah, she's kidding. I can see it in her eye.
Still, there were plenty of grade A, USDA choice, superb, high-quality reasons to deny him entry, so they did.
Good.
Yeah.
Shit.
They were like, no.
Oh,
No.
that's cute.
Yeah.
But no.
Just minutes more, and it probably would have been too late, likely having been waved through with the Canadian authorities none the wiser. If you don't know this about Canada, they don't enjoy letting in Americans probably at all, really. And they sure as shit do not let anyone who has commit criminal misdeeds of this nature down here in the States in. So they are not about to let you take in the beautiful scenery as you toast with maple syrup at Tim Hortons or I don't know, whatever it is that usually happens in Canada.
That sounds like a dream.
None of that for you, duplicitous dudes. This is where Sergeant Bill Gifford probably had a moment of satisfaction, reflecting that all the vacuum bag sifting was truly worth it.
Oh.
When Kirby was arrested at the Canadian border, he had another truly unusual reaction. I didn't screw up, Bill. I didn't screw up. Screw up what, Kirby? Screw up by maybe murdering your own goddamn family in a really, truly horrific way? Or maybe by having an alibi with a hole big enough for an 18-wheeler to truck on through? Spoiler, guys, there's also still more to discuss in terms of forensics. I've actually been holding some stuff back. The vacuum bag was like not super exciting, but really interesting.
Yeah.
They're gonna nail him.
Good.
Yeah.
I hope so.
Yes.
I mean, he's not clever enough to get away with this.
He's definitely not.
Not even a little bit.
No. Anywho, Kirby was held on $500,000 bail and charged with 3 counts of murder in the first degree, 2 counts of sexual assault in the first degree, plus 1 charge for kidnapping.
Oh.
This last one deeply upset Kirby, which is odd. It's almost like he screwed up by objecting to the only charge that, according to the facts of the case, was maybe a bit of a stretch.
Right? I didn't kidnap him. I just murdered him a little.
Yeah, just a little. Well, you see, Alaska has this statute, apparently, that I'm not totally sure how I feel about. I love it for this case, I'll be honest. It says that if you restrain any person in any significant way for the purpose of performing sexual assault, it adds another count of kidnapping to the list of offenses. Oh, by the way, if convicted, it's punishable by up to 99 years in prison.
Oh, wow.
Poor 8-year-old Melissa Newman's body had been found with a pillowcase knotted around her small wrist.
Oh.
Investigators' findings would sadly indicate the pillowcase had likely bound her to the bed, just leaving it at that fact. Because I don't really want to focus on the more shocking and graphic details if we've already kind of gone through them. Because these were real people, and that was an innocent child. Suffice to say that I don't feel bad about the DA reaching on this one. Not even a little bit. Mm-mm. In this particular criminal case, it's my view that if he had left so much as a gum wrapper on the floor in that house, he should be charged with littering.
Yeah.
So, I mean, normally I don't love to see charges stacked like this, but there's not a single case that breaks further away from that precedent in my mind. This isn't possession of a small amount of marijuana for personal use. So I'm going to say it's okay.
Yeah.
Also, weed is legal, so feel however one might about that. But we can agree that maybe we should save the jail cells for, I don't know, people like Kirby?
Actual criminals?
Yeah. I know, hot take coming out of Portland, right?
Right. I know.
Kirby was held in the same pretrial facility as a long list of duplicitous dudes at the time. For one, Dwayne Chambers, who was there himself for the fatal stabbing of a stranger. Tom Warren, who would plead no contest to more than a dozen charges of rape. Then there's Gary Newcomb for the assault and attempted murder of 2 police officers. And lastly, Kevin Collins, a former drug dealer who was convicted of the intentional killing of 4 people, as well as 1 accidental death during a drug-related shootout.
Oh.
Mm-hmm. Given the nature of his crimes, Kirby was still not about to meet his new bestie. There would be no BFF friendship bracelets. I'm telling you about these guys, not because they're going to come up again in the story necessarily, but so we can all grasp how people that have been responsible for some pretty reprehensible acts of violence thought he was pretty much the lowest of the low.
Yeah.
Kevin Collins, in particular, got to thinking about his own young daughter. Conflict began brewing between them about a newspaper. But I think it goes without saying that the ensuing altercation was decidedly about a whole hell of a lot more than a newspaper.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure.
Following the incident, when it was all said and done, Anthony had to get 6 stitches.
That's it?
I know, kind of. Shit. I mean, I shouldn't be rooting for someone's physical harm, but
well, here,
you know, like if the shoe fits. Yeah. We've got another promo roll that we are really excited to share today.
I'm Jennifer James.
I'm Jill Stanley.
We're psychics.
We're sisters.
We are the hosts of the Common Mystics podcast.
If you enjoy creepy stories,
road trips,
haunted locations,
history,
and mysteries,
then the Common Mystics podcast is for you. Check out our website at commonmystics.net. Find us on Apple Podcasts
or wherever you're listening to your favorite pods.
You guys, we're back! It wouldn't be the only time Anthony would face conflict or violence while in lockup throughout the course of his trial. No, not this guy. He had 7 total fights at the Cook pre-trial facility.
Wow.
7 fights. trial. In 1987 alone, he was involved in 3 separate incidents on August 29th, December 13th, and then again on December 16th.
Jeez.
He stayed out of trouble until February 8th of 1988, when, you guessed it, there was another altercation. Later that same day, he exhibited more disruptive and boisterous behavior. The next day, he was moved to a different module, at which point he threatened Sergeant Whitaker. It just went rolling straight and steadily downhill from there.
Oh my gosh.
With another fight occurring on February 11th.
It's like he was trying.
After that, he didn't even make it a week before getting into another on February 17th. On February 27th, he refused to obey a direct order, which actually seems mild comparatively, all things considered.
Yeah.
On May 5th of 1988, it even sounds like he was involved in 2 fights on the same day.
Wow. Was he like trying to get put in solitary?
I don't know, but here's the best part, Cassie. May 5th of 1988, which is literally the date as I'm typing these notes. May 5th, although 2022, obviously, I'm not a time traveler writing to any of you from the past, a couple of months prior to my own birth. But it's another one of those like weird number pattern things. I literally was reading about this on May 5th. And
That's
I'm like,
weird.
Anybody else feel creepy all of a sudden? Gross.
I always feel creepy.
Yeah. Sometimes I feel extra creepy. As a result of his less than stellar behavior behind bars as he awaited trial, additional precautions were eventually determined to be necessary. Kirby earned the following, and it's kind of a long list. Leg restraints during the standard recreation period for prisoners. He was placed in handcuffs prior to opening his cell using the security slot. The handcuffs, as well as ankle restraints, were to remain on whenever he was outside of his cell, other than when he was showering.
Wow.
He was no longer allowed in pretty much any of the activities available to others in the facility. Outside of the facility, he would also have to wear a waist chain for transport, which normally I'd be a little bit hung up on how this seemed just kind of over the top, but not so much in this case.
Yeah.
He also landed himself in what was referred to as administrative segregation, aka solitary.
Yeah.
He was placed in a single cell, allowing for little to no interaction with other prisoners. And the other prisoners literally cheered.
I feel like
I'm kidding. I don't know if they literally cheered, but
they were probably pissed that they didn't get a jab at him anymore.
Which, again, normally I'd think that this might be kind of on the cruel side because I just think that isolation is such a good tool for basically manipulating or torturing people. But a big part of why he was probably having so many issues and altercations may have been that he was well known to be quite racist.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's not going to work for you.
Not really. No. So remember, all of this is just pre-trial dickhead shenanigans. But we'll talk a bit about the trial as well. DNA testing was in its infancy, to say the least. This type of evidence didn't offer a percentage of certainty in a case that was high enough to convince a jury of guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, at least not on its own typically. The technology was just too new and too unreliable at the time of Kirby's trial. I think it's like 1986 is the first time that DNA evidence was actually used in a courtroom.
Wow.
And it's not the same type of DNA evidence like as we understand it today. It's really more like blood typing and stuff like that was used. Which, as we know, that's not like unique to just one person.
Yeah.
So, but Kirby is really unique.
Yes, he's a snowflake.
But there was an expert in a highly specialized field that was brought in to assist the prosecution. Amongst Dr. Shanfield's accolades were holding the title of President on the Council on Forensic Education. He also served on the American Society of Crime Laboratory Directors and was a fellow of the American Academy of Forensic Sciences.
Ooh.
He analyzed some of the samples that had been taken from the Newman home following the crime. He found a unique genetic marker present in the semen sample that was taken from the crime scene. So while full DNA sequencing was probably pretty much out of the question, if that sample could be compared to a sample obtained from Kirby and the same trait identified in his sample, that would be as close to a slam dunk as a prosecution might get.
Yeah, that's pretty lucky that there was a...
I know.
What did you say?
He's got some weird shit going on with the spunk.
Oh my God, don't call it that.
No?
I don't know why, but that creeps me out.
Oh, that's how I feel about the word wiener.
I like the word wiener.
I hate it. Ugh. Okay. As any good defense attorney would, Kirby's legal team strongly objected to the use of this technology, referred to as allotyping. Their objection was formed primarily on the basis that it did not meet the standard as required by the Frye test. The Frye test is a legal standard in relation to evidence that's presented in court. So courts will evaluate whether an expert's testimony should be allowed based on the merit of their qualifications. And then I would imagine, sometimes based on the probative value of the evidence. I'm sure that probably gets factored in as well. I won't get bogged down in case law and precedents, but basically the Frye test requires any evidence presented to meet the standard of being widely accepted as reliable in the scientific community. So that means academic research with control groups and serious studies. All that aside, there was also the potential issue of Kirby just simply not being willing to provide a semen sample for comparison. I mean, certainly a possibility, right? The state argued the sample not only could, but should be compelled not just by the court legally, but also by a medical professional physically, if necessary.
So my big question was, what if, what if he couldn't get it out? The semen sample. Like, what if he was just so nervous he couldn't get it out?
Turns out there is a trick. And then when that process in the room was explained, I think just about everyone's ass cheeks literally puckered.
I bet some people got excited.
Possibly. We'll spare you the details. If it's not readily apparent to you what that process entails and you're curious, you can update your antivirus and give prostate milking or massage a quick goog.
I mean, I feel like if you don't know what that means, you might be missing out a little bit in life. Sorry, not sorry.
Okay. In March of 1988, after carefully considering the issue as presented by the opposing legal teams, the judge found in favor of the defense, in part because of the substantial intrusion into the defendant's right to privacy. Alaska grants a higher standard on this issue than the federal government. So Kirby lucked out on that round.
Ugh.
But he would later provide a sample voluntarily, which just makes it seem like all of that discussion and debate was much ado about nothing. But whatever, clearly Kirby has a flair for the dramatic. Ironically, eventually Kirby's own defense convinced him to provide a semen sample voluntarily in order to pursue a possible full acquittal.
What? No way. That wouldn't happen. Like that wouldn't happen.
Wasn't gonna happen. The unique marker previously identified in the sample at the crime scene was readily apparent in his sample. What's more, our good friend Dr. Shanfield, who initially had been unaware it was Anthony's sample that he was analyzing this go-around, he recognized the markers immediately and realized the incredible discovery that it was in the case against him.
Wow. That's really cool.
He literally took a look at the test results and was like, "Oh, hey, Kirby, what's up?"
We got you.
Yeah. So I want to break this down for you a bit, though, because it gets fucking wild when you know the numbers. Only 4% of the population has this genetic marker.
Oh.
And only 7.1% of the population has the same blood type as Kirby. So this is a very narrow segment of the male population.
Yeah, man.
Kirby is a B secretor, which you've probably heard this term before in other true crime cases, especially from the early days of DNA evidence. So that doesn't look great, right?
Mm-mm.
But just to put this into perspective, only 1/4 of 1% of the male population has a sample with all of these specific markers in their DNA that were identified at the crime scene.
Man.
Kirby, seriously.
There's no explaining that one away.
I'm sorry. No.
The Burger King did it.
Mm-hmm. But wait, of course, the prosecution and the defense then were going to proceed to battle it out on whether the results could be shared at trial with the jury. It's a fucking fry test, man.
Man.
It's a good thing. I mean, it is. But it's enough to make your heart race thinking about this guy possibly going free for lack of evidence when the defense has that shit in the wings. So, spoiler, guys, the state is going to get their man this time.
Yay.
Yay! But I just want to go through a few more things on the case because I think, honestly, there's still a couple of really wild things. Another place we've heard of before in an Anchorage case comes up in this very case as well. Chilkoot Charlie's.
Oh.
Yeah. It was the last place that Shelley Connolly was seen alive before her brutal assault, culminating in her sadly, really terribly painful death near the bottom of an embankment just off the highway. If you haven't listened to that episode yet, I have to insist you get it queued up right after this. It's episode number 31, in case you're one of those creepy people that occasionally skips around to different episodes like me.
Mm-hmm.
So we all agree Chilkoot Charlie's, like we talked about in episode 31, was probably a real bitchin' place to hang out. And it sounds as though it likely even remains so.
Are we going to visit?
Yeah. Here's the thing. I don't know about you, but after these cases, I'm not sure you could pay me to set foot in that establishment. In a state that already boasts the most serial killers here in the U.S.
Alaska? Really?
Mm-hmm.
Have you told us that before?
I'm telling you now. I'm not sure, actually.
I just feel like I wouldn't think of Alaska as being...
I know. Well, you start doing a little digging on cold cases and you'll realize Alaska was a real scary place to be.
Shit.
I mean, still very much is.
Yeah. There's bears there.
Yeah, lots of bears. Moses. Mises. Okay, so I mean, I hardly think Alaska is actually boasting about it, but it's incredibly sad. Before it seems like I'm just shitting on Alaska, which I would never. It's beautiful, okay? Keep in mind that the statistics are also adjusted to account for population And many parts of Alaska are very sparsely populated.
Yeah.
So, Alaska, girl, we see you. We know you're trying. Anyway, back to Chilkoot Charlie's. This is where Anthony shared real weird poetry and allegedly made comments to the effect of, I hate this, that the Newman mother had to watch.
What? This was after the murder. He was sitting there bragging about, oh my God. What the fuck? That just made me mad. Did you need to include that, Caitlin?
I feel like, yes. Yeah, I did.
Already hated him.
Yeah, I mean, you're never going to not hate him. So his alibi was very weak to begin with. A number of elements of his story changed repeatedly. We talked about that. But eventually, his alibi was just totally torn apart at trial based on witnesses' testimony such as this. Kirby's defense counsel actually allowed him to testify, which was also an interesting choice. He managed to clean up pretty well, at times crying and appearing to give thoughtful responses, but ultimately his story surrounding the days leading up to the crime and his alibi would shift in some marked ways again. Market ways. He stuck by his story that Nancy let him borrow John's camera and gave him loose change and coin wrappers from her tip jar, though. So those details, for whatever reason, was very important. Those remain the same. Okay. I'm going to make you unhappy again.
Okay.
It was discovered that Nancy had a bowel movement during her sexual assault. When questioned throughout the investigation and the trial, Kirby came up with the wildest stories to explain how fecal matter ended up on his shirt. Aside from that violent encounter, he was literally he was so full of shit, and evidence from the crime literally showed he had been smeared in it too.
Oh, God.
Honestly, I think that's a great look for him.
Yeah.
As I've already alluded to, Kirby Anthony was obviously found super totes 100,000,000,000% guilty. He was sentenced to 357 years behind bars, which does not seem long enough. But he just hadn't stirred the pot enough quite yet.
He's not finished? Damn.
Following the reading of the verdict, he tried to get the judge to sentence him right away, waiving his right to a pre-sentencing assessment. The state would ultimately decline to take him up on this offer. And good on that judge and the DA, honestly. Why leave any room for his defense to try to appeal his conviction or the eventual sentencing based on a technicality on that front? They basically said, oh, hell no. We're going to go and do everything by the book, Kirby, because we are never letting you out once we get you in.
Oh,
you are
thank
going
goodness.
to die in prison. Hopefully 357 years from now. Kirby became furious and belligerent, and he put on a real good show of crying and screaming about how the judge needed to sentence him right now if he really believed he could do this.
What? What a weirdo.
Having had enough for probably several lifetimes of Kirby drawing breath, when his beloved wife and sweet young daughters never would again, John Newman tried to attack Anthony after the outburst in court. Basically, as soon as they got him kind of subdued, Anthony tried making some additional comments to John. And John was like, that's enough.
Wow.
Honestly, thank God, though, John was able to be restrained. Oh my God, I just feel so bad for this man.
Yeah.
John was restrained, and thank God he was able to be before his passion led to any potential consequences in a courtroom of his own.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that he would have killed Kirby with his bare hands given the chance.
Oh, 100%.
And honestly, it sounds like if officers in the court hadn't acted quickly, he may have gotten his way. In the end, John Newman, the prosecution team, and the detectives all hugged, relieved by the verdict, though all still deeply impacted by the horrific events and the pain of loss. Obviously, but
Yeah.
I just love that.
Yeah. It turned out, I mean, I don't want to say good. Like,
I mean, as
none
good
of
as
this is
can.
good, but at least he can't hurt anybody else.
I know. It makes me really sad. Let's do some tarot. I feel like I'm...
Yeah. Let's do the tarot.
Okay.
All right.
I'm tired.
I am
I'm
tired
doing
of this
this now.
case as well.
I know. Oh my god, I need a snack.
So I'm going to shuffle the cards. We're going to get insight into part 2 of the Kirby shenanigans here. We did put the devil card back in.
Yeah, just in case.
Because I don't know, I was feeling like it needed to be in there for some
Yeah,
reason.
she's like, we might get it again.
I mean, it would be fitting either way.
I really think so. But I feel like there's something else in the deck that's gonna speak to this second half. But I could be wrong. It's happened one other time.
We could always check the cards around it too and see if the devil popped up again.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I think this is a new one for us.
Oh, I don't know what that word is. I'm not going to lie. She pretty though.
The Hierophant.
Wow, you just pulled that out of your ass.
No,
What the fuck does Hierophant mean? Is this a word?
It is a word. I mean, I don't know that I can like spit out a definition on the spot, but you know what? Actually, I can. I'm about to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. The Hierophant. And we actually drew this right side up.
Mm-hmm.
Keywords are spiritual authority, leadership, tradition, institutions.
Oh.
The Hierophant is a figure of authority and power, like the emperor, but the Hierophant's power is of a spiritual nature. Often he's shown as a religious leader, and some decks call him the Pope. Sometimes he's seated on a throne, dressed in priestly... I don't know what that word is. I'm guessing. I'm going to say garb. Garb. Crowned and holding a scepter. In the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, acolytes stand before him, deferring to his wisdom as a representative of religious authority. He may represent a person who's dedicated to a religion or philosophy. Or he can indicate that you're trying to break away from religious influence or dictates. In a broad sense, this card can refer to any organized institution, religious or otherwise, that exerts authority over its followers. Upright, the Hierophant says you choose to live according to the beliefs you share with a group or organization. It serves you in many ways. You derive security from knowing the rules and where you fit in. Allying yourself with this group helps you achieve your goals. You might even be the leader, aspire to assume that position, or have a close relationship with the leader. In a reading about money, you probably hold traditional ideas about money and resources. Perhaps you could profit from allying yourself with an established group or a religious organization. All I'm hearing is Kirby, go to church. Sometimes this card suggests paying more attention to spiritual considerations instead of being so focused on material matters. So focus on material concerns. Like that was another That's so weird. That was in the devil card, the interpretation in the reverse from the. Okay. If the reading is about your job, the Hierophant indicates you must follow the rules if you want to succeed. Sometimes he represents a rigid corporate structure, religious organization, or educational system. I'd like to add maybe a prison. You may hold a position that uses your spiritual knowledge and interests. In a reading about love, this card may signify a relationship based on traditions, structure, or a spiritual path. You and a partner may be dedicated to serving a higher purpose, a higher cause. I don't know what happened there. And your relationship supports your goal. Okay, we've got an extra excerpt here.
Okay.
The Rider-Waite-Smith deck shows 2 crossed keys below the Hierophant. These mark him as a teacher who holds the keys to the sacred mysteries. The keys also represent the intellect and intuition and the need to use them in tandem.
They represented to me someone getting locked up for life. This kind of
Because he had neither intellect or intuition.
Yeah. This looked like a judge sitting here on their throne judging with the keys, and then you're going to shit your pants, Caitlin.
Stop, what?
She's going to shit herself.
No. Okay. I don't poop, but what?
Look at the number at the top. It's a motherfucking 5, y'all. What?
I have to go. I did not make that connection at all. Okay, I don't like it. I have to go now.
Oh
Goodbye.
My gosh. That's so crazy.
I just think it's really interesting because it's, it talks about institutions and you derive security from knowing the rules and where you fit in. Aligning yourself with this group helps you achieve your goals. I'd like to do a little more research and figure out if Kirby's known to have joined any particular group, or as they're often called, gangs in prison.
Oh, maybe. That just seemed to me like the group is like society. You need to fucking follow the rules, or you're
Kirby, you need Jesus.
You're gonna get locked up, man.
Oh my gosh.
It's so weird to me that there's like, oh, I dropped it, but there's keys on it, and the whole episode was like
the keys.
Him being,
Yeah. I mean, he never had a key
trial.
to this apartment.
Oh, that too. I didn't think of that.
Yep. And then he specifically mentioned that the person who found the victims was the only person that had a key to their home.
Yeah, that is weird too. Interesting.
I feel like the devil was way, way more on for me.
No, this one was on for sure.
Okay, I'll read this and see, because I just skimmed it really quick, but this is the extra excerpt that's below the reverse interpretation.
Oh, okay.
When the experience of the breath of God becomes morality, and morality becomes legality, and legality becomes a system of outer customs and conventions, then the process of degeneration lies unveiled before us.
Yeah, that was pretty significant, I think.
Okay, well, I have to go now. So it's
like,
been really nice chatting with you guys. No, what were you gonna say?
Well, as much as I personally hate it, like, religion is kind of the basis for our laws. Like, don't fucking murder people, like, don't harm people. And that the whole thing was about pretty much religion. And then,
I like how we both do the same gesture. Like, it's a loop. We're podcasters, so you guys can all see this, right? Well, I mean, you could if you were on the Patreon, but,
if you want to see us explain things with our hands and not our mouths.
Oh, God. Oh, wow. This one is just so weird. And that ended up being more on than I thought.
Okay.
What? Oh, God.
No.
What?
Okay. It's a personal thing that I noticed, but I don't know if I want to say it. Okay. She's got her 2 fingers out like she's going to give a prostate massage.
Oh my gosh. That's a really good point. She also has a scarf around her neck.
Oh my God.
I thought that's what you were going to say.
No. Oh my God. Yeah. And it's like white, like mostly, I don't know.
It's like a light pink.
Oh, is it?
Is it?
It looks light.
I think
to
it
me.
looks
But
light
I don't know.
pink.
When you think of like bed sheets and pillowcases, like I think of white because that's what I have.
Is very, very long too.
Yeah.
That doesn't look like a normal scarf. It's like this very...
It's very long.
Okay.
Interesting. Wow, that was...
Actually, I don't think I'm hungry anymore.
I think the numbers on the card were really crazy. That you were literally talking about 3 and 5.
They were discovered on March 15th.
Yeah.
And then the one detail of the case where it was just about one of his pretrial fights, I was listening and like reading about that on May 5th.
What was the double one? Was it 15?
It was 15.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so weird. Okay.
All right. Well,
if you guys think of anything else, let us know as usual. We might get out of here. We're getting a little squeamy.
I know. I think I'm gonna start getting chills. I don't like it.
Have a creepy ass day. See you next Tuesday. Not you, Kirby, this time.
Definitely
not.
Still no. Never again. Yuck. Ew.
Bye. Yuck. Ew. Bye.
So, for all of you that are listening, if you have any true crime or paranormal stories that you want us to share, maybe with the whole Pacific Northwest.
Yes, we would love to read them on the pod.
Yes, we will read them out loud.
Not just in our heads.
Yes. They don't have to be from the Pacific Northwest if you would like to share. Email us at pnwhauntsandhomicides@gmail.com. It's all spelled out, no special characters. Super duper easy peasy.
Follow us on Instagram and Facebook. Same thing as the email at pnwhauntsandhomicides, all spelled out, no special characters. Please also rate and review us on whatever platform you're listening to, and check out our stories on social media because our meme game is hot.
Agreed.
And if you agree, like Caitlin, you can also find us on Patreon and support the show.
Bitchin'.
Are you? I don't think you are. Your hair and your face say otherwise.
Wow, thank you. Co-host, you look like shit, so I'm pretty sure that you are not okay.
You just look frazzled.
Yeah, I do. I know my hair fell out from behind the headphone. Okay, I'm gonna fix it because clearly it's not my best look.